Welcome back to another episode of Health is Wealth. And thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. And as always, I am beyond grateful and thankful from the bottom of my heart to each and every one of you who is tuning in to today's episode and also tuning in to help support the podcast. As every week, I am sharing a new episode, just sharing some words and hopes of inspiration and motivation, things that I'm learning on my crazy ride that we call life. Things for the first time, things seen it in a different point of view, in hopes that it just helps bring value into your life today, perhaps provide you some inspiration, motivation, and hope for today. So thank you once again for tuning in. And what I wanted to talk briefly about in today's message is just, spread some words of encouragement. And that, I believe it is never too late in life. It's never too late to become everything that you were meant to be, that you were supposed to be, and that you want to be in life. Early on when we were very young, we had all these goals, all these ambitions, all these dreams. If we could just take that ride for a minute, going back to when we were very young, we remember what it was like when we were in grade school, when we were once asked, what do we want to be when we grew up? We had things from rock stars to astronauts to doctors to firefighters to police men and women and so many different things, singers, actors, actresses. And, sometimes along the way, somewhere, we stopped dreaming, Our plan A turned into, plan B. It's time to grow up and go to this route versus the original route of the dreams that we had wanted. And then we kind of lose that spark. We lose that, that childlike imagination of becoming the thing that we always desired to become, right? And then we get stuck in that rut and that trap. And sometimes we never get out of it. And it seems like the older and older we get and grow, the more sometimes we're told, hey, it's time to be responsible now. That dreaming, that imagination, that thing you once wanted to be, that was before, reality set in that you're an adult. That was just for when you're a kid. That was just kind of told to you as a kid, just to dream, to be whatever you wanted to be. And that really wasn't, what people meant. And then you're supposed to just turn 18 and, all that's supposed to go out the window. And then we get stuck. And the older we get, the more we're told all these things, You're just stick to what you're doing, just settle with what you got. Be happy with where you're at. You got to be responsible now. Dreaming is for kids, etc., etc. And, I think it's unfortunate that we've lost a lot of that because, we tend to go on throughout our days, especially as we get older, as the days go on, not really ever feeling excited, not feeling happy, not having enjoyment in our life, and the harder it gets when we get older, because the more you just feel like, you're doing the same mundane stuff over and over again. And you got to stick doing to these things that you don't like and living this life that you don't like because it's what's expected of you. It's what everybody says you've got to do. You can't dream anymore because you're an adult now and that plan didn't work out. So you got to stick with plan B and you're supposed to be responsible now. And who are you to think you could dream to do something big, at 30 years old or 40 years old or 50 or 60 or 70, right? But I'm here to say that I believe it's never too late. I believe it's not. I'm convinced now more than ever, this whole age thing that we put in our heads, that society puts on us, that says, well, when you're a kid to a certain time, that's when you can be anything that you want to be. And then when you reach a certain age, you just got to accept reality. And this is what life really is. And you got to not enjoy it. And you got to not follow your passion or dreams or things that you desire to be and have and want in this world. And you just got to live this life that's everything but what you want it to be. And somehow it's just been stuck, right? And we've convinced ourselves and society's convinced us that that's just the way it's supposed to be. And I'm here to try to break this myth, to try to distill this belief that we've got and prove otherwise. I am 40 years old, you know? And I've come to understand now that it's like, if God gave me life today, if God gave me breath in my lungs today, there has to be something more for my life that I was intended to be here for. Not to live a life that I'm just okay with, you know, a life that I'm just settling for. You know, I truly believe God has put these visions in me and continues to remind me that I'm in charge of my future, not the you know, belief system of what I've been believed, you know, to you know, instill in me from what society says. Oh, you're too old. Who are you to think you're supposed to do anything special with your life right now or going forward, right? And as the days go on, you know, I'm reminding myself I can either listen to those people or I could be the living proof that anything is possible at any age, and it is never too late to start. And I believe every day that we are here, it is never, never too late, right? And that's such part of my mission on the journey that I'm on, to the places that I want to go, to the things that I want to do, to the person and man I want to become. It's to prove it's never too late to build something. It's never too late to live and fulfill a purpose. It's never too late to chase and pursue and achieve the dreams, the thing that you always wanted to be. You know, maybe that changed, but maybe there's something else that's in your mind all the time, that's on your heart all the time. You're like, gosh, I wish one day I could do something like that. But why not? What's stopping you? People? No, my friend, it's really just us at the end of the day, believing that that's what we're supposed to do, right? God gave us each an individual life for a reason, an individual mind to think for ourselves. But somehow we allowed everybody else to think for us, and we just kind of go with the flow of things. And as I continue to push forward on my journey, I want to continue to just bulldoze these beliefs that we have, that just because you're older, you can't start something new. Just because you've been doing that one job and career for 15 years, and yeah, you've been responsible because you got a family to take care of, you got these things to do, you know, and commend you for all that. Doesn't mean you can't now change in a different direction to do something that fulfills your heart and get paid for it, right? To go after that dream and get paid for it, you know, to live that life that you truly want. I think it's the farthest thing from the truth to believe that we're supposed to live these lives every day, day in and day out, hating it. You know, it's kind of almost culture, it feels, that we're expected to just, you know, complain about our jobs, complain about our bank accounts, complain about our bodies, complain about the life that we hate, like as some badge of honor, like that's the way life is supposed to be. We're not supposed to enjoy our life. We're not supposed to enjoy our job. We're not supposed to enjoy our bank account, body, or lifestyle. And that's just what the normals become. Instead of thinking like, gosh, what if there was a God that created us? What if there was a God who created us in his image? What if God actually put us here to live a life that we want, to actually be happy every single day for the rest of our lives? Could you imagine? I think that's the reality of what's supposed to be. But we've somehow fallen into the trap of mediocre, you know, of people believing this is just what you're supposed to do. Live the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years until you die, just hating life. You know, there's this quote somewhere that says, you know, a lot of men die at 25 or 20, and we just tend to bury them at 70 years old. And that really hits, because it makes me feel that way sometimes thinking about it in life, that, you know, sometimes people have such fires and desire to do things, to be something, to achieve something. They have a goal, they have a dream, they got things they want to do, they want someone they want to become, places they want to go in life, and just one day that flame is doused. We all had it as a kid. Some went forward and pursued it, right? While others just kind of believed, hey, that was great dreaming once upon a time ago, that I was going to be this thing in the world and it was going to be so great. But, you know, I guess I'm an adult now, and I guess that's just not what I'm supposed to do. That was just meant for me being a kid. And, you know, again, this message is that wherever you're at in life, no matter how old you are, no matter how far behind things you are in life, I truly and sincerely believe from the bottom of my heart that it is never too late. And I've seen the proof. This is not just talk. I've seen it in action. I mean, go Google people who had a late start in life. You know, one of the most frequent ones I always think about is Colonel Sanders. You know that guy, KFC, right? We've all had it before. We know the guy. They talked about, think of how big that dream is. You know, it's, this KFC just empire that was built. And most people don't even realize, I don't know, it wasn't until his late 60s that he was rejected 1,000 times for his recipes and he finally built KFC. Think about that. Think about how most people in their mid to late 60s thinks it's over for them. There's nothing more that they can leave, you know, or do here on planet Earth while they were alive. At that point, you're like, game's over, folks. I'm just waiting to close the curtains now, you know? And here was someone who followed a dream, who made a dream come true, and just think of how big it became. There's many, many more stories like that from people who built things, you know, to people who started careers in music and entertainment and all sorts of stuff. And it's just crazy to believe that, you know, I'm sure at one point they probably thought, that's too late for me. I'm sure maybe it crossed, you know, Colonel Sanders' mind at that age, being in mid-60s. Yeah, I guess there's no ever getting this thing off the ground, you know? But it just goes to prove that the only limiting belief that we have is the one that we place on ourselves. It is the prison that we lock ourselves in and throw away the key. Because who else is really in charge of that but us, right? Even if other people don't believe that you can do something big when you're later on in life, start that thing that you wanted to start, become that person that you want to become, doesn't mean it's true. It's only when we give power to it, that we believe it, that we let it live up here rent free, that then kind of takes over and becomes our reality. I want to continue to dispel all of these myths, that it's never too late to start. Sometimes maybe we don't find our callings until a little bit later in life. Sometimes everything we're working up to is just to build that, you know, underdog story to get to the main event. I truly believe that's part of my journey. You know, as I've gone through so many different stages and phases and things in life, and truly believe I'm at a point now where I understand going forward a little bit more of what my life is supposed to be about, who I'm supposed to become, what I'm supposed to do, you know, the things I'm supposed to help change in this world, you know. And as the days go on, that becomes more clear to me, and it's given me new hope in life for my own journey, because, you know, it reminds me that I don't have to stay stuck in places in my life that I don't want to be. It reminds me that God put me for more than where I'm at today. And the best is yet to come. And I feel I'm only just warming up. Now, if I truly believed in my heart, 40 years old, hey, show's over, guys. You know, it was fun dreaming while I could, but I guess I just need to take life seriously now and just stick to what, you know, I've got to do every day and just be miserable with it and not be happy and just be content and just live the next 40 years that way. You know, not really excited about what I'm doing, not really living with a purpose or calling or path that I desire to go down. Right? And this new feeling of purpose makes me realize that, gosh, you think it's all over at 40. You know, you get older. You think it's all over at 30 and 50 and 60. But truly, if you don't believe that's true, it could just be the beginning for you. You know, at 40 years old, you think you've got it all figured out. When you get older, you think you understand it all. You think you get to this point and you're like, I am the wizard of knowledge. I know everything. I've been through everything. And the more you realize, you just don't know what you don't know in life. You realize, you know, you would think you'd have it all figured out, and you realize that you don't. But with that, you also realize that we once thought that at this age, it's done. At this age, we're old. At this age, it's over. At this age, there's no possible way we're allowed to start some new thing because maybe it's some unwritten law that you hit a certain age. You're not allowed to have a new dream. You can't start a new career. You can't create or build a new life for you, your loved ones, and others, right? And I just realized all that thing is from the farthest thing from the truth. You know, through everything I've been through to get this point in life, and really having the grace of God speaking to me a lot lately, I feel like he's talking to me, telling me, son, you're just barely scratching the tip of the iceberg. You know, everything that you've gone through wasn't to end you here at this point of life, but it was to warm you up, to batter you up for the next chapter of life that I got waiting for you, because it's going to be the best part of this movie called Your Life that you're ever going to see and anybody's ever going to see. And I've got such faith and hope in this next new chapter of my 40s in life. And again, this message is about that encouragement. Look, I get it. Most people want to tell you you're too old to chase that dream. I get it. Most people want to tell you that you're too old to do this. You're too old to be that. You're too old to everything. Sometimes it's because people just unfortunately gave up on their own. Maybe because they had too many people tell them it wasn't possible, and they now believe it, and now they've trapped themselves in a mindset of not thinking there's a way out. That the only next easiest thing to make themselves feel better is to take somebody else down with them. And at the end of the day, we can either listen or we don't. But I'm truly here to tell you, on my own journey, I promise you, God as my witness, I will prove and prove and prove that as you get older, it is never too late. At any age, it's never too late. But especially when you get older, because we have that mindset. We have this mindset that just because we're older, we can't start something new. Just because you're 50 or 60 means you can't start that business, learn that new language, start that hobby that you've always dreamed of doing. You know, changing your identity from someone who wasn't living right in life to become everything you could be, to give yourself new life, a new light in this world. There's so many different ways I could go about this angle-wise to tell you that it's never too late. But I think most importantly, above all, is we have to decide now and today that it's never too late. Somewhere I heard that quote where it's like, today it's never too late, but tomorrow might be. I can't remember the origins of it, but I believe it to be true because tomorrow isn't promised. Tomorrow isn't guaranteed. We don't know how the winds change tomorrow in the seasons of life and direction or how much life we've got left. And so just know that no matter where it is that you are in life, please understand it is never too late. I encourage you, if I've got enough courage at 40 to still dream of a big life that I want to live for me and myself, my loved ones, you know, if I have the courage to act upon this as I'm trying to build a brand, I'm trying to build a path, a route, you know, even if society says, hey, you're too old to do anything new, to try something different, to be something big, I'm still going after it. Because the faith I have is not necessarily people, but, you know, it's more in God and his vision and plan for me. And telling me that, hey, you're just getting started. Hey, this is just the beginning. Hey, you aren't too old. Our age is just a number, you know? There isn't a certain age that defines really old. What does that even mean? Just because you're 40, you're old? Just because you're 50, you're old? There's people who I've met in their 80s and 90s that have more youth, more life in them than people I've met in their 30s and 40s. I mean, mentally, physically, all of it, right? So old, what does that really mean? It's subjective. You know, we are how we feel. We are how we live. That's the true definition of age. I've met more 80 and 90-year-olds who act more like they're 20 and 30 than I've ever met, you know, some 30 and 40-year-olds, you know, who might as well be 80 and 90. You know, they have no life in them. They can't move around. They can't do a whole lot of things. So don't be fooled by what people try to convince you as. Don't fool yourself into believing the trickery that it's too late to become the things that you want to be in life, the person that you want to become, do the things that you want to do, start that thing that you want to start. And so much of my journey as, quote unquote, starting later in life and really having more direction in life of where I want to go and what I want to be and what I want to do. I want my story to be a testimony of what could be possible. If you believe more in your vision, you believe more in your heart, you believe more in God and what's possible, and you just go for it and put the worries to the side and put the doubts and put the fears and push the naysayers and push the haters and push the people who are trying to tell you it is not possible simply because there's a number attached to your name in this quote unquote AIDS thing. My friends, I hope this gives you inspiration, motivation today. I truly do, because I truly want to be proof that no matter how old you are, if you're 5 years younger than me, if you're 10 years younger than me, if you're 5 years older than me or 10 years older than me, as long as you've got air in your lungs, as long as you're here on this planet, it is never too late. I don't care if you're 65 or 70. I've seen some amazing things at people at 70, going back to school, starting jiu-jitsu and martial arts, doing their first 5Ks. It is amazing what is possible when the mind believes that more so than it tries to believe the trash that we believe in society. You're too old. You can't do this. You're too old. You can't have dreams. You're too old. You can't start over. Hish-posh, right? Guys, the message here is simply that it is never too late to become and do what you've always wanted to become and do what you've always wanted to do in life. Don't believe in the false news. Believe in that vision. Believe that that's possible for a reason. Believe what you're feeling in your heart isn't a coincidence. There's something you're dreaming of today. There's a life that you want. There's a person you want to become. That's not coming from you. That's coming from him because he knows it's possible, because he believes that is what you want to do. He believes you are able to achieve it. I want to see you all succeed. It'd be a shame for anybody, especially if they're older, to not believe they can do something simply because they're older. There's no merit to that. Just because you're older means nothing. There is no law that says at 60 you can't start that business or go back to school or start that thing. Show me. It's all false news, guys. It's never too late. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. And as always, I will see you on the next one.